Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In one of our recent videos, we take a look at what Boba Fett's goals are, now that he's started his own criminal enterprise. One of our viewers, Zachary Braun, commented about how the Sarlacc has a unique ability to absorb and meld with their victims. He goes on to wonder how this will further affect Boba Fett's personality and motivation in the new Book of Fett series coming out later this year. Great commentary, Zachary. As much as I know about the Star Wars universe, the collective knowledge of the fanbase is just overwhelming. So let's take a look at this issue here. What exactly are Sarlaccs, and how do they connect with their victims, and how will this affect Boba Fett? Just a warning, guys, a lot of this stuff is legendary material, but in my opinion, until canon either disapproves it or replaces it, the legend stuff is still what's real. So Sarlaccs are one of the crazier species in a galaxy full of super dense killer teddy bears and space whales. And very little is known about them because they're extremely deadly to study. Researchers don't even know if they're carnivorous plants or animals. The Tusken Raiders had a legend that the Sarlaccs gave birth to itself somehow in Tatooine's planetary core in the days before the twin suns split apart from a single star. They believe that the Sarlaccs will continue to consume everything until the only thing left to consume was itself. This is why you should never listen to a Tusken Raider about anything. They clearly haven't survived in the desert this long because of their intelligence. The Sarlacc's life cycle was not only very long, but it was also very strange. When a daddy Sarlacc falls in love with a mommy Sarlacc and they want to have kids, the much smaller daddy Sarlacc begins cannibalizing the mommy Sarlacc. Once the daddy Sarlacc gets to the same size as what the mommy was originally, it explodes and releases like thousands of spores into the air, and some of this actually gets all the way up into the atmosphere. Once these spores find an organism to latch onto, they start parasitically feeding off of it. And this is probably why Tusken Raiders and Jawas cover their face while walking around on Tatooine. Now, once this larva grows to a certain size, it becomes more mobile, and it no longer needs to clamp onto a host. These larval Sarlaccs are almost kind of cute, as Han Solo finds out when he's tasked with transporting an infant Sarlacc to an Ithorian collector. Even at this stage, though, these tiny little guys were extremely deadly and very fast moving. They basically maintain the same shape they would have once they mature, but they could jump and run around and cause a lot of havoc. This is all done, by the way, without any bone structure. They're basically spineless and all tentacle and pure muscle fiber, along with some teeth, a lot of pointy teeth. And don't sleep on the Sarlacc's small size. At this young age, they can still consume things much larger than itself, although the exertion expended by the Sarlacc when digesting easily puts it to sleep. Very cute, but what's not cute is when a larger beast eats one of these larvae. If they don't manage to chew their food correctly, which is why you should always chew your food correctly, the larva Sarlacc will then begin to consume the larger thing that's eaten it from inside out, eventually killing it. Now, Sarlaccs also don't have eyes or hearing. They depend on their tentacles to feel their way around the desert. This is probably the only reason why they haven't taken over the entire planet of Tatooine or wherever else they could be found. The other thing that keeps Sarlaccs in check are crate dragons. It's the only thing that preys on them successfully. Now, the Sarlacc's mouth has a beak inside of it, which sort of functions like a tongue. The throat of the Sarlacc is lined with blood vessels and veins, which were very sensitive and could determine the size, weight, and strength of the food it was swallowing. The Sarlacc would determine which stomach to put the prey in. Based on this, stronger prey were placed in secondary stomach sacs, where they were more isolated, and smaller prey went into the main stomach. Now, once the Sarlacc reached a certain size, it would begin burrowing beneath the sand and could quickly tunnel around, similar to how a sandworm or a crate dragon travels around. This is probably one of the more terrifying states you could find a Sarlacc in. They were both large and very fast and hungry during this time period, and they could basically sense tremors and foot vibrations using their tentacles. Eventually, though, the Sarlacc would become so large that it would just have to permanently root itself in one location, with only its mouth and beak visible, and its most vulnerable organs hidden deep beneath the sand. Once the Sarlacc's stomach was full, it would just continue to expand, and the entire animal would just grow larger. I mean, these things could live tens of thousands of years, so they could grow to pretty enormous sizes. So it's really in the stomach of a Sarlacc where the magic happens, the really strange and weird magic that no one asked for. Once the prey falls inside a Sarlacc's mouth, if its razor-sharp teeth don't rip them apart, the prey would enter one of the stomachs alive, where it would essentially be digested slowly for thousands of years. First, tentacled vessels in the stomach walls will embed themselves into the prey's skin, and these tentacles will begin injecting neurotoxins into it, which keeps them immobile, but also in constant pain. These same tentacles inject the Sarlacc's blood into their victims to sustain them and also extend their lives for hundreds of years. We're not exactly sure how this works, but the process preserves the victims so that they can ironically live way beyond their species' lifespan, but are also slowly getting dissolved at the same time. The reason it takes so long is because the Sarlacc's stomach acid is extremely weak, unlike the crate dragons. Now, during this time period, a victim within a Sarlacc stomach actually begins to meld with the Sarlacc. It's almost like a reverse parasitic relationship. It's kind of confusing. When Boba Fett fell inside of the Sarlacc pit, the beast had a lot of issues digesting him because of his Mandalorian Beskar armor, which is almost impossible to destroy. Generally, when a Sarlacc swallows something that it can't digest, it will just spit it up eventually. This is a very rare occurrence, but it does occasionally happen. Like when Zorba the Hutt was consumed by a Sarlacc. Hutts have impenetrable skin and probably are too large and hardy for most Sarlaccs to digest. When the Sarlacc connected to Boba Fett, it also accessed his subconscious. It's at this point that it began telepathically torturing him. We know this because footage from Fett's helmet cam showed the Mandalorian squirming and reacting to stimuli and pain that did not physically exist. This revelation leads researchers to believe that the Sarlacc are semi-sentient and pretty malevolent creatures. At the same time, Boba Fett's consciousness started melding with the Sarlacc's consciousness, which was made up of all of its previous victims. And so the Sarlacc not only becomes stronger through absorbing prey, it also becomes more intelligent, unless it consumes a flat earther. The specific Sarlacc on Tatooine that digested Boba Fett identified closely with its first victim, an individual known as Susajo, and it seems like Susajo's consciousness could even occasionally overpower the Sarlacc and control it. The Sarlacc was able to connect with creatures when it injected its blood into its victims. Messenger RNA from inside the blood would begin exchanging information between the host and prey to create a connection. This mind meld is a two-way street, and so Boba Fett and the Sarlacc will be profoundly changed by their connection. Now, Boba Fett eventually tricks the Sarlacc into destroying his jetpack, which causes a massive explosion inside the beast. Boba Fett then manages to fight his way out of the Sarlacc and back onto the surface of the planet. Clearly, the Boba Fett we see in The Mandalorian has seen some crazy things by this point. Gone is the little Boba Fett we knew from Episode 2. But beyond just aging, the question now is Boba Fett some kind of strange hybrid Sarlacc human being? Has Sarlacc blood and enzymes permanently changed Boba Fett's molecular structure? Perhaps he's stronger now. Maybe the preservative measures created by the enzymes have even made him immortal, or at least will give him a much longer lifespan. More importantly, has his experiences in connection to all of the Sarlacc's victims profoundly changed his view of the world and how he interacts with other people? The Jedi Order have long admired the patience of the Sarlacc and its ability to play the long game. This is why they named their Form 1 lightsaber combat Shicho the Way of the Sarlacc. This lightsaber form is not just about flourish or style, it's all about simple movements and patience. Now, Boba Fett clearly used to have problems with disintegration, and in his youth he was emotional, and sometimes that got him into trouble. But his maturity now that we see in The Mandalorian might be something much more than just a product of aging. There's also the terrifying possibility that Boba Fett now carries the hopes and dreams of all of the Sarlacc's former victims within himself. Perhaps this wiser Boba Fett will be more capable of creating a criminal enterprise because, like the Sarlacc, he's able to wait the long game and slowly and carefully make his move. But then again, in Legends, it's said that Boba Fett's experience inside the Sarlacc severely affected his health in a very negative way. This is why people don't voluntarily seek Sarlacc pits for an immortality elixir. By 1980 in Legends, Boba Fett is running out of money because he has so many medical bills, because he's contracted all sorts of rare cancers, because that Sarlacc blood severely messed with his metabolism and cellular structure. Now, generally when it comes to Disney adopting Legends content, they sometimes keep the main story points in Legends similar to the new canon, but the amount of detail is sorely lacking. The fact that Boba Fett is alive now in canon was first inspired by Legends. But now I guess we'll just have to wait and see how much of the Sarlacc remains inside of Boba Fett. I'm also curious to see how he got away in the first place. But I guess now we'll just have to wait and see how much of the Sarlacc still remains inside of Boba Fett. In my opinion, here's how it should go down. Boba Fett is cornered by a bunch of Nikto henchmen. Fennec Shand is in the corner, bleeding out from another stomach wound. Boba Fett's armor is slowly getting worn down by blaster bolts. And then boom, tentacles just pop out of every orifice on his body and he becomes Tentacle Sarlacc Fett. Let me know in the comment section below if you think that's a horrible idea, and only if you think it's a horrible idea.